Hello there, this is Mark Smith with Family Tree Counseling Associates. I've got, I think, an interesting video for you today. The title is Character Misperceptions Will Get Your Soul Slaughtered. It's been almost 10 months since my own shattering. And I'm constantly processing and I'm constantly thinking about what happened to me. I'm constantly trying to figure out what's true and what of these truths that I'm learning can empower me the most. And I think I've stumbled across a concept that has been empowering for me, so I thought I would pass it on to you as a concept that hopefully will empower many of you out there. I saw a comment on one of these YouTube videos. It was a fellow, and he wrote, "Hi Mark, thank you for this post. I've never felt so sad, broken, lost, alone, and worthless. If only I would have known in advance what I was setting myself up for, I would have run so far in the other direction. Sadly, it has almost destroyed my self-esteem. Nothing makes sense. Every part of my heart, mind, spirit, and soul is now lost. I need treatment and I need help." I was already thinking about this concept of character misperceptions when I got this message on the comment section, and the words "if I had only known in advance" sort of spoke to me and hung in the air for me as I read it. The shock and trauma for me was discovering the difference between who I needed to perceive this woman to be and the actual truth about who she had always been. From the very second that I spoke with her on the phone to the grand finale where I was cast away like garbage, she hadn't changed. She'd been the same every single second. So the main problem for me was I completely mistook her. I misjudged her. I misperceived her. So I had to ask myself, how in the world could a therapist who's written books on abandonment, how did I misperceive this woman so utterly and so completely, even later in the process when I had all the evidence in the world stacking up right in front of me as to who she was? So I'm going to talk about several things. I'm going to talk about why not only myself, but we as a people, we shattered folk from narcissists, why we tend to misperceive, why we are easy prey. And then I'm going to talk about 10 ways that for your future you can do your due diligence in any interactions romantically. So for me, as I quiz myself as to how I misperceived this woman, it comes down to, number one, the main answer, it isn't that she was such a manipulative genius that I was just outmatched. That isn't the main answer, I think, for most of us. that's giving them too much power, and frankly, I think giving us too little responsibility. For me, I wasn't afraid enough of romantic entanglement with this woman. Number two is I projected my integrity and my good character onto her. If I'm nice and if I tell the truth, well, gee whiz, she must too. The third thing is my needy little boy required me to hide the evidence from my rational adult self. My needy, voracious, mommy-hungry little boy required me to hide the evidence from my rational adult self. The fourth thing, I think I got my numbers mixed up. The fifth thing is I could never have imagined that there could be people who could possibly be so selfish, so hurtful, so deceitful, so depraved, and so ruthless. One of my videos, I quoted an 18th century poet named Charles Baudelaire, who was quoted loosely in the movie The Usual Suspects by Verbal Kent. And he said, "The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that he didn't exist." So if you're walking through the world, if you're walking through the world of dating websites and romantic entanglements, and you don't believe that there are such a thing as cluster B characters, narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths, then you are fresh meat. And you are in a dangerous place because you're trusting the world too much and you're going to get gobbled up. The sixth reason I didn't look at the evidence when I just had her mask come completely off is I was in massive trauma and shock. When you're in the early stage of your shattering and you have all these complex PTSD symptoms, one of the symptoms is your brain develops and your heart develops a very powerful addiction to the person who hurt you the most, to the narcissist. And then the seventh reason why we tend to misperceive is many times they are manipulative geniuses. The main answer isn't that they are manipulative geniuses. I saved that to last, but this woman ran a pretty good game. But the biggest problem was me. And I was primed and ready to see what I wanted to see, and I was primed and ready to continue to see what I wanted to see. One of my blogs several months ago had this killer photo of a wolf in sheep's clothing. My friends, if you cannot tell the sheep from the wolves and the wolves from the sheep, you're going to get torn to shreds. The last week I spent with this woman alone, off and away at the beach, I made 3 videos, and the videos were entitled "The Slaughter of Trust." And this woman sat next to me while I was recording these videos about the horrific trauma that happens when one's trust is slaughtered. And yet, she knew who she was, and she knew her dark secrets, and she knew the boom was about to be lowered upon me. And she sat there like a wolf. All the while, my thinking that she was an innocent, kind, loving sheep. The word vet has several meanings. It could be a guy returning from the war. It could be a guy who takes care of your dog. But it can be the following description, definition, and that is vet, to make a careful and critical examination of something, to check it out, to examine it, to scrutinize it, to thoroughly investigate it, to inspect it, to look it over, to screen it, to assess it, to appraise its worth. The problem that we get into, my friends, is we don't vet people. I'm going to read that again, the definition of vet, and that is to make a careful and critical examination of something, to check it out, to examine it, to scrutinize it, to investigate it, to inspect these people, to look them over, to screen them, to assess them, to evaluate them thoroughly, and to appraise who they are and what their safety level is. We don't do that. We blindly fall in love, and we see who we want to see. And we attract to ourselves, unfortunately, thinly disguised versions of the people who wounded us the most in our childhood growing up. So I did not vet this woman. She looked at me adoringly. She threw a lot of love bomb compliments in my direction, and she dulled my senses with a whole lot of sex. And then I projected onto her that she must, of course, nice person that she was, have the integrity that I possessed. I've also quoted this quote that I'm going to share in another video, but I love it so much you might hear it again. It's from the movie Silence of the Lambs, when Hannibal Lecter is talking with Clarice Starling in the courthouse when he's in this glass prison. And she's begging him, how do I catch the bad guy? How do I catch Buffalo Bill? And Hannibal Lecter says, first principles, Clarice. Simplicity. Read Marcus Aurelius. Of each particular thing, ask, what is it in itself? What is its nature? I'll read that again. Of each particular thing, ask, what is it in itself? What is its nature? Clarice figured that out, and she caught her bad guy because she figured out the nature with some help from Hannibal. But that's not what we do. We don't vet. We don't seek to really, truly, fully know the nature of these beasts. We let them in the door. We let them in the gate as if they're a sheep, when they're the most vicious, destructive, violent, ruthless wolves that roam the earth. So I'm going to share 10 ways that moving forward, you can do your due diligence in your romantic endeavors. I'm preaching to myself here. I've started to date a little bit, and I'm trying to wade in pretty slow and trying to keep my eyes open as to what dangers might be lurking. So 10 ways to do your due diligence to vet possible romantic interests. Number 1, be terrified. So many times I'll ask the newly single, the newly ready to date, if they're terrified, and they tell me no. And they have a big, goofy Gomer Pyle looking frickin' smile on their face, and I want to slap them. I'm like, dude, you're not terrified? Romantic love is based upon the wounds of your childhood. Your sexuality, who you are attracted to, is rooted in the wounds of your childhood. You like who you like. It's not just a matter of picking the nicest person available. You got to dig them too, right? You know, if you're wired to pick somebody in the spectrum in order to work on your issues, you can pick the nicest person in the world. You're going to be a little bit bored. So the answer is to find people who've done a great deal of work, who are on the shallow end of the cluster B pool, who are willing and able to dig in and do much more work as you build something solid. So you must be terrified. Number 2, since you're terrified, you should take it very slowly. What happens is we jump into sex on the 3rd date, and it clouds our minds, and we shouldn't be jumping into sex on the 3rd date. I'm not going to tell you, it's a very personal thing. I'm not going to say when it should start. I'm just say be careful, go slow. Because you don't know who this person is. So be careful opening up your soul and your spirit and your body to people when you don't really know who they are. Number 3, scrutinize every single red flag. Instead of unconsciously getting rid of the red flags, grab hold of them. And when somebody mentions a red flag, the next time you see them, you sit them down and have a little come to Jesus meeting. And you say, well, what about this? That sounded sort of squirrely. And if you don't get the right answer, you run. If you don't get an authentic recovery answer, you run. Number 4, ask around about this person's character. Hopefully they're from your social network. They're a friend of a friend of a friend, or a friend of a lot of friends. Hopefully ask, hey, who is this person? Can I trust them? Do they got a history? I'm not asking you to gossip. I'm asking you to look out for me and protect me a little bit. What do you know about this character? Number 5, in today's day and age, do a Google search. If there's anything bad that's of notoriety, it'll come up on the internet. And also, number 6, inspect their Facebook history. If you're starting to date somebody and you look on Facebook and they've had, 8 relationships in the past 2 years, there's a red flag. Something's wrong there. So be careful. This is not being paranoid. This is doing your due diligence. A company isn't going to say, oh, well, that company seems profitable. They seem nice. We'll just buy them for $2.3 billion. They spend months and months and months and months and many hundreds of thousands of dollars figuring out who this company is. And they do their due diligence, as should we, even more so, because this is our hearts. Number 7, assess the character of their friends. If their friends are scuzzy, drug-using alcoholics, well, they are too. Number 8, embrace conflict. Don't run from conflict early on. Anything comes up, jump on it. Don't be mean. Don't be reactive. But keep it real. Keep it open. Keep it vulnerable. When you did such and such, I felt such and such. Can we talk about that? Number 9 is to set healthy boundaries for yourself. I can't tell you how to do that. You got to be connected to your heart. You got to love yourself, and you got to have a voice. So don't send me a bunch of questions saying, tell me how to do it. It comes as a result of you doing a tremendous amount of work on yourself. And then the 10th way to vet new romantic partners would be start therapy early on. If you're dating somebody 3 or 4 months and there starts to be some conflict, that is not too early to start quality family of origin based therapy with a therapist who knows how to spot vampires, monsters, psychopaths, and cluster Bs. Take them to a good therapist and say, dude, have my back. Do I got me a vampire here, or do I got somebody with a heart to do the work, even though they might be in the shallow end of the cluster B disorder crowd? So that's your due diligence. So the thing that has helped me is I didn't just get randomly destroyed out of the blue. I contributed by my ultra naive, way too trusting, not fearful enough, primitive, needy little boy looking for my mommy misperceptions. And the power of the wounding wasn't the depth of the cunning of this narcissist. It was the depth of the neediness of the little boy who was in denial and who needed to have his misperceptions. It isn't going to happen again to me, and I trust that it won't happen again to you. So, if you haven't joined our YouTube channel, please subscribe. Also, I do have some excellent books on shame and abandonment and on affair recovery. You can get those at familytreecounseling.com. Now, I am available for Skype appointments anywhere in the English-speaking world with good Wi-Fi, but I got to tell you, my openings are closing fast. I've been inundated by so many people that sometimes it's hard to keep straight who's who. But I got a few slots open, but I wanted to tell you guys that we are building a trauma treatment team. I've got 5 or 6 people from my staff, and we meet every Tuesday, and we turn on YouTube and we study other providers of this information, the leaders in the field. And I'm going to learn more, and I'm training Renda Hall and Jen Dorr and Steve Cooper and Amy Dansby and Angela Caprietti in learning how to understand narcissistic abuse syndrome and learning more about the cluster B disorders. So I'm trying to train up an army of people that help all you people out there that need help with various fee levels. So beautiful Sunday here in Carmel, Indiana. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching, and God bless.